So to begin, founder of TASS, Anthony Dixon, will make a few introductory remarks, and then he'll introduce TASS and our speakers today from Class of Your Own, Alison Watson and Daniel McDonough. And then Alison and Daniel will speak for about 35 minutes with slides. And at the end of their presentation, they'll field any questions for the remaining amount of time. And then at the end, Anthony will have some brief closing comments. As participants, as I said before, you have been placed on mute. So if you'd like to ask a question, please put it in the chat box. I'll be monitoring the chat box as the event goes on. And if there's anything that would be asked at that time, I'll do my best to get through to Alison, Daniel, and Anthony. So with that in mind, I'd like to hand over to TASS's founder, Anthony Dixon.
Thank you, Jake. Welcome everybody to this webinar introducing Design, Engineer and Construct. I'm Anthony Dixon. I'm the founder of the Alliance for Sustainable Schools, or TASS, which is a non-profit network of schools around the world working together to help accelerate the transition to a sustainable future. The members of TASS share a commitment to the principles of the Sustainable Schools Charter. As a community of practice, the Alliance connects sustainability practitioners in schools around the world to share their learning and amplify their impact. And as an agent of change, we harness our collective influence and partner with innovative organizations like a Class of in the community to catalyze systems change in 5 areas of focus that are important for sustainable schools: school buses, school buildings, school food, school uniforms, and education for sustainability. TASS is delighted to be partnering with the Class of Your Own to bring you this webinar introducing their design courses, Design, Engineer, Construct, and to support the rollout of their courses to more schools throughout the APAC and MENA regions. Class of Your Own is a UK-based education, consultancy and social enterprise focused on the built environment. It aims to help teachers foster interest in career pathways for school students in architecture, engineering, and construction. They do this through STEM-focused learning programs focused around the built environment and infrastructure that aim to deliver genuine social, economic, and environmental impact. I introduce you this afternoon to 2 key people from Class of Your Own who will be leading today's webinar, Alison Watson and Daniel McDonough. Alison is the founder and chief executive of Class of Your Own, a former land surveyor. Since founding Class of Your Own in 2009, she's dedicated herself to helping young people recognize that the built environment is an exciting, challenging, and technologically stimulating sector in which to learn and work. Class of Your Own also works with leading industry and education partners to provide recognized routes into work experience, apprenticeships, and further and higher education. DEC programs are changing the way the construction industry is perceived by students, teachers, and parents alike. In recognition of her years of commitment, Alison has been awarded a Doctor of Engineering honorary degree from Heriot-Watt University and elected honorary fellow of the Chartered Institute of Civil Engineering Surveyors and awarded the President's Award and the Richard Carter Prize. She was honored in 2018 with an MBE for services to education in Her Majesty the Queen's New Year's Honours. Daniel McDonough is a qualified teacher based in Manchester who was awarded the Institution of Civil Engineers ICE 200 medal for his outstanding contribution to civil engineering. In 2018, he was appointed a specialist lead teacher, SLE, specialist leader of education, and he holds a master's in education from the University of Manchester. He has 14 years of teaching experience in the UK and has developed, taught and led Design, Engineer, Construct courses to secondary school students at levels 1, 2, and 3. His experience teaching DEC enabled him to join Class of Your Own in 2019 as the Teaching Development Manager, and his current role is to support and develop Class of Your Own's family of new and existing DEC teachers throughout schools and their learners. With that introduction, I'm pleased to hand over the floor to Alison and Daniel.
Yeah, thank you, Anthony. That's a really, really wonderful introduction. And we are indeed at Class of Your Own really delighted to be a partner of the Alliance. It's a formidable thing that you're all doing, and we're really, really proud to be here today. As you mentioned, I am a land surveyor, absolutely, and my love of nature and the great outdoors, it was an obvious choice of a career for me. There's nothing I like more than standing on a mountain and owning the landscape. But also I was highly influenced by my brother-in-law, Richard Watson. He was one of the lead climbers for Greenpeace until he sadly passed away a few years ago. And he was always in my ear about change and planets and so on. And even when my daughter was born, you know, he gave me some good advice on how I should be bringing up my daughter. I think the thing that really, really made this whole issue of the built environment and the planet come to light was when I was actually working on a government school building program, and you'll all be in schools. I'd like you to take a real close look at the schools that you're actually working in, the homes you're living in, because the built environment is a major issue around the world. And I think the thing that really frustrated me when I was surveying the schools between sort of 2004 and 2009 as part of the UK government programme, there seemed to be an awful lot of box ticking, a lot of tokenism going on. A lot of the schools were actually quite unsustainable, and even in our first sort of iterations of design, engineer, construct, you know, we were interviewing the young people, interviewing teachers, and they weren't really included in the building design, and that really bothered me. I was really quite frustrated by that. The Sustainable Schools National Framework that was introduced by the UK government in 2006 or around that time, I came across that mandate. The whole idea was around 8 doorways of, you know, waste, travel, energy, traffic, so on. Lots of things, including inclusion, including well-being, including the global dimension, how what we eat, what we buy, everything we do has an impact on somebody around the world somewhere, and not always a good impact. And yet no one had heard of it, and that frustrated me too. So here you've got a really quite formidable plan launched by the UK government that nobody had heard of, and here you've got the built environment, where I just felt that we had an impact on everything that was talked about in that framework. And even in the early days, I can remember something that stayed with me all this time. One of the young boys who sat in one of those meetings with architects when it's, you know, what do you want to see in your new school, John, and so on. And he actually said, I want to see a school that is BREEAM outstanding. Now, BREEAM is a measure of sustainability in the built environment. And he already knew that his school was only going to be very good. And he really questioned the architect and the contractors at the time. And the architect felt very awkward, and I actually said, well, actually, it's about money and, you know, it's cost. And the young man, it stuck with me forever. He actually said, so you're telling me that you care more about your profit than me and my planet? How wonderful, from the mouths of babes. And it really struck a chord. And also, sadly, you know, we've been around the world for the last 14 years, and me probably for the last 20 years in my previous role as a surveyor. And even the leading sustainable schools are doing amazing things in their curriculum. And I really am so impressed with the way that education in lots of areas has really taken this planet issue, and they're doing a lot about it, and particularly through the STEM curriculum and through geography and so on. But even a few weeks ago, I was with one of these schools who professed to be one of the leaders. I don't know if it's self-professed or otherwise, but either way, when I said, so what are you doing about the built environment and construction and infrastructure? And the lady looked at me as though I was speaking a completely different language. They were doing absolutely nothing, didn't even know about it. So hence we're here today to hopefully raise awareness of the major impact that the construction industry has on our planet. Now, DEC was written as a UK curriculum, unashamedly British. At the end of the day, we have standards that are adopted all around the world for the industry. So, you know, localization can take place, but this is a British curriculum to British standards, and indeed to the Royal Institution of British Architects plan of work. You can Google that. I'm sure Dan will put some links up later. But at the end of the day, we are working to highly regarded standards. And every time the UK does something wrong, my goodness, do we reflect on it and we change and we embed it. So I'm going to, just as my sort of parting shot here, I'm going to read the briefing introduction to my keynote at the Fabisia conference. Some of you, I'm sure, will be going to that next month in Bangkok. And I really look forward to seeing you there if you can make it. We're doing a workshop as well with one of the schools that have joined TASS, the Prince of Wales Island International School with Sam Hodge, another teacher like Dan, who's been around teaching DEC for years. So I wanted to introduce the importance of what you're about to hear from Dan and why DEC was established through this introduction. So I hope you'll indulge me to read this for just a few more minutes. So, the value of the global construction market is expected to reach $14.4 trillion in 2030. From school buildings to Olympic stadiums, natural disaster restoration to historic site preservation, and renewable energy to coastline protection, the construction sector provides awe-inspiring solutions, and yet it contributes around 40% of the world's carbon. It desperately needs to clean up its act. Next generation professionals growing up with unparalleled exposure to the effects of global warming can turn their anxieties into action using entrepreneurial, critical thinking and collaboration skills. Their aptitude for technology will stand them in good stead for a sector that is digital and data-driven, using artificial intelligence and machine learning to create a greener, smarter, more inclusive environment. But there's a problem. For years, construction has been a last resort career choice and stereotyped as dirty, manual, and male-oriented, even one for our low ability boys. In reality, it employs some of the smartest people in the world. So how does a sector with such a stigma inspire educators to create learning opportunities that will inspire children and young people to join it? The built and natural environment offers the most exciting opportunity to breathe new life into STEM education, but takes visionary leadership and innovative teaching to allow ingrained perceptions to change. So that's my introduction to the keynote for this year. And if we're talking about inspiration people and real leadership, it's a great opportunity and great segue to introduce you to my right-hand man. That is Dan, who's on the line now, who really, really inspired me so much as a teacher, and certainly a teacher who absolutely took the real drive and ambition that I had to transform built environment education. He personifies it. So I'm really proud that Dan's here today, and I'm going to stop talking and hand over to Daniel. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Alison. Well, yeah, again, a lovely introduction. So thank you very much. Now, I suppose the first thing I just wanted to highlight very quickly is that, yes, I'm a teacher and yes, I'm an educator, but my education myself was not in the construction industry nor the built environment. And I think that's an important message to get across, really, because I know that for many teachers that will also be the case. Where my strength lies as a facilitator. And I think that that's something that the Design Engineer Construct programme really sort of benefits from, and that is that are willing to learn alongside the learners as well. So why did I get into Design Engineer Construct? What was it about that? Well, as a new teacher, I was becoming quite disillusioned quite early on with the curriculum that I was teaching and the general direction in which I felt the education framework was going in the UK. And I met Alison very early on in my teaching career, and I was introduced to Design Engineer Construct programme, which is project-based learning at its heart. And for me, that was really, really poignant, because my education, my master's, was in creativity and encouraging creativity, and I knew and I believed that project-based learning was a great vehicle to allow all learners of all abilities to make really strong, good progress. I also wanted to raise the aspirations of my learners as well. I wanted to make sure that they were going on to university and employment in really aspirational careers. And construction industry wasn't something in our school and our school culture that was deemed suitable for that type of pathway. And as I was made aware, and as I had some understanding of already, that it is absolutely the case. You know, there is a plethora of aspirational academic career pathways in the built environment that will lead young people onto fantastic lives, fantastic careers, traveling the world, winning awards and earning a very good salary as well. The other really important aspect for me was improving literacy and numeracy for my learners. And I was a big believer in applied learning and doing that through a project. And so what Design Engineer Construct does is it gives learners opportunities to develop their literacy and develop their numeracy in a broad range of activities, tasks and projects. Raising and improving employability skills, it's all very good our students having fantastic academic credentials, but what we also need to make sure is that they're ready for the world of work as well. And so by developing their soft skills, by developing their interpersonal skills, and by raising their confidence levels, raising their self-worth, that then puts them in a much stronger position when they go out into the world and ready for employment. Developing industry knowledge. Now, that was something that I had to learn alongside the learners as well, and I continue to learn. And I love that about education. I always felt as a teacher that if I was excited and I was interested and I wanted to learn, then the students would come with me also. And so that is something that I think is great about the construction industry. We are talking about a digital industry here, an industry that is moving very quickly. And the opportunity that you will get to work with industry professionals, which I'll talk a little bit more about later on through our programme, will really give young people and teachers access to the very best that the industry has to offer. And further to that, digital skills. We all know now that we are moving into a digital world. The construction industry is a digital sector. It's something that they are working hard to ensure that things are moving in the right direction with that. And that is, we think that digital is a great vehicle for learning, which really engages learners and really gives them access to some really, really important skills as well. And then finally, and very importantly, is global citizenship. And that's why, as Alison mentioned, we're so excited to work with the Alliance. I think that it's really important to recognise that not every learner that we will work with will go into the built environment, but every learner we work with will make good global citizens, we hope. And so by raising their awareness around issues of sustainability, around issues around climate change, what we are hopefully doing is empowering them to feel like they can make a difference. And I think that's a really important message. You know, I think there's a lot of doom and gloom around young people, around our future, and I think it's really important that we say, well, no, you are the people that can make a difference. So I mentioned earlier on that the program relies very heavily on an industry and education partnership. And these are some of our partners and collaborators that we work with, tier 1 contractors, global consultants, universities, professional bodies and charities. And I'll talk a little bit more later on about how that actually looks from a practical sense as well. So I just want to talk from my perspective, because I think this is really important. Now, I started out working with a handful of students in an after-school club on the Design Engineer Construct programme, and that's a very common place for schools to start, whether it be in the lower phases of the school curriculum or whether it be in extracurricular. It makes sense. Now, over the following 8 years, the Design Engineer Construct programme grew and grew and grew to the point where I had 5 members of staff at one time delivering the programme across the whole school from 11 years old right the way through to 18. And the thing that I'm probably most proud of through all of that is that the 40 new architecture, engineering, construction leaders that went into the industry and were head and shoulders above their peers as a result of the programme. And these are real change makers. We're talking designers. So we've got Laura there, who's a graduate Part 1 architect and on her way now to becoming a chartered architect. And then Johan just above her, who is an architectural technologist. And many learners and many teachers won't know what an architectural technologist is, and nor did I prior to the programme. And I think that's another really important facet of this, is that we're introducing them to a range of careers that, quite frankly, they probably wouldn't have heard of. Engineers as well. So probably out of all of my learners, the 40 that went into industry, I had more civil engineers than any other discipline. which was really interesting actually. But some examples there, you've got, I always refer to Lauren because she is a great example of how the design engineering construct program really works. So Lauren, who's just on the top line there, just left of center, she was 11, 12 years old when I started working with her. She was a bright academic learner. She was identified as having real potential in STEM, but she had no particular interest in the built environment at that time. She was a typical girl. She liked horse riding. She thought she was going to go to university finance or law. She took a bit of convincing to come and join my club initially, and it's well known that I used to bribe her with biscuits to come initially. And then all of a sudden she fell in love with the built environment, and at 16 years old she was taken on a level 3 apprenticeship by WSP, who are a huge consultancy. They then took her through her Eng Tech. She was the youngest ever person to get her Eng Tech. She's now graduated university on a degree apprenticeship. She bought her own home at 19 years old, and she's doing amazing things in industry, winning awards. She's already fast-tracked into leadership, and she's doing great things in the industry as well. And then construction professionals as well. So we've got, I can't help but mention Stephen in the top right-hand corner, because he was my first and only surveyor out of the 40 learners, and I know Alison was extra excited about that, having a land surveyor come through our school. And then construction managers as well. So typically you would think that, oh well, being on site is not necessarily a female's role. Well, I can give you two examples of two fantastic young women there that certainly are changing those opinions. And let me tell you, I would not want to get on the wrong side of either Shania or Paige on site. Two fantastically confident young women who went into the industry doing amazing things as well. That's just a snapshot of some of the success stories that came just out of my school in Manchester, in the northwest of England. So the program itself, as I mentioned, everything is project-based learning. Now, in order for us to get our qualifications and our awards recognised and endorsed, we partnered with Training Qualifications UK. You may or may not have heard of Training Qualifications UK. You probably have heard of AQA. Well, AQA have recently bought out Training Qualifications UK, so they are now a sister company of AQA. So they are responsible for awarding all of our learners their qualifications. And I'll send through some separate information post-event just about further information about that as well. But I'm conscious of time, and there's some things that I just want to touch on specifically. So I mentioned earlier on about the lower phases of school is a good place to introduce the DEC program, usually because there's more flexibility in the younger age groups at school. Typically you would look to do so maybe within the design aspects of your curriculum. So whether you're doing the International Baccalaureate, or if you're doing the English National Curriculum, you've got design and technology where it would typically fit as well. So we have our DEC awards, which are entry-level mini projects, which are really flexible and can be adapted to any curriculum, essentially. Now, we have mapped them to the national curriculum, as I said, and the MYP, so the middle years programme for design as part of the International Baccalaureate. We currently have about 11 of these awards, and every one of our awards are fully resourced. They come with a design brief, and the design briefs vary from, there's the examples you'll see here, design inclusive housing, to design a school for a rural village in Uganda, to design a net zero McDonald's restaurant. We have design a music recording studio and venue as well. So we have a range of different projects that hopefully are going to really excite and engage the learners and give it a really good introduction to the built environment. What they have to do then over the course of the project is take on the different roles of the project team members and produce a digital or physical model of their final design and then present that back to an audience as well. So what we're trying to do is pull out all the core skills that we feel are really important around building design, around understanding the careers aspects of the industry, all through community that is at the heart of everything we do, and sustainability is at the heart of everything that we do as well. We also have a range of regulated qualifications. Now, our qualifications sit on the regulated qualifications framework in England and in Scotland as well. We have DEC level 1, which is 120 guided learning hours. I won't talk in too much detail at this stage about them, because I'm sure that there are many questions around that, and I don't want to dive too much into that. But I suppose the thing that I will take away is that, again, it is project-based learning. Again, it's a deeper dive into the sector, into the industry, and into building design as well. At level 1, students are asked to design an eco classroom for their school building. So typically you would go out onto your school site, you would find an area that you would then survey. You would then take that information, you would turn that into some sort of topographical site plan. Students would then design, take on the role as an architect, design, come up with some concept designs for their building. They would then do some landscaping as well, so become a landscape designer. They would look at site engineering. They would look at facilities management as well. All through the premise of designing this eco classroom for their school and their school community as well. Then at level 2, again, this is comparable to, in England, GCSE. So typically learners 14 to 16 in the UK would take this. Again, there's a little bit more detail required at level 2. So you'll see this is an example of one of my learners' works. In fact, it's Laura, who's now an architect. The brief at level 2 is to design a building for your community, and it can be anything that you want. So she went out, did some research into the local community. She felt that the community would benefit from an opportunity to do some adult learning. So she found a really small plot of land in Salford in Manchester, which is why the building's such an unusual shape. And she designed a building where people from the community could come and learn about science as well, because her other passion was biology and science. And so I've had learners that have done all sorts of projects at level 2, ranging from homeless shelters that have cafes downstairs that fund people to be able to stay in the homeless shelter, boxing gyms. Lauren, comes to mind there, she did a horse riding centre as well. So what I really like about level 2 is learners can apply their own passions, whether it be music, sport, anything that they want. They can apply that to the built environment. And in fact, level 2 was the point at which Lauren really fell in love with the built environment, because she got to design her horse riding centre through this qualification. And then there's level 3, which is, for me, is the jewel in the crown. I was the first ever teacher to teach the level 3, and it is such an impressive qualification. It's a challenging qualification both for learners and teachers. The reason it's so challenging is that it is equivalent, or it's comparable to an A level, should I say. So learners in England would typically take this alongside a selection of A levels. So my learners would typically do maths A level, physics A level, and then perhaps design, engineer, construct at level 3. It has full UCAS points as well, which again is significant for learners who are wanting to study, go on to study university as well. And it covers everything at level 3, from students have to do energy analysis of their building, so they have to look at how it's going to perform over its life cycle, how they're going to procure their materials for the building, how they can do that in a sustainable way. Can they source materials locally? Can they source a local workforce? They then have to do a full financial costing of the project. They have to do structural analysis of a building. They have to produce a structural model as well. it's a huge qualification, but something that really prepares the students well for university and the world of work as well. You know, the feedback we often get from universities, including some of our partner universities, is, well, if your learners are doing this at level 3, what are we supposed to teach them at undergraduate level year 1? So they are doing some really, really impressive stuff at a really young age. Now, all the while they're doing so, in fact, before I move ahead, all the while they're doing so through what we call the Adopt a School partnership. So you might be thinking, oh, well, I'm not sure we've got the teaching staff that have the capabilities just yet to be able to teach something like this. Well, let me just reassure you that I was one of those teachers as well. And where the Design Engineer Construct program is different to anything else that I've ever seen in education, is that we rely on a partnership with an industry adopter, as we call them. Now, that industry adopter works with the school and provides people on the ground, professionals that are at the top of their game, that are the cutting edge of the industry. Those professionals will come into school and work with the teachers and work with the learners to support the delivery of the curriculum. And so, as I mentioned at the very top of this presentation, I was very much a facilitator in the room. I would be guiding learners through their projects whilst using experts from industry to come in and provide the expertise. So I wasn't the bearer of all the knowledge. I was very much a person helping learners through their project alongside them as well. Now, just to give you an example of how that might look in a practical sense. So starting at the very top of a project, you know, as I mentioned at the start, you would have to do some site analysis of an existing area where you're going to place your building. Well, me as a teacher, I don't have the first bit of knowledge about site analysis. I'm not a surveyor. I've never had any experience in surveying. So that would be a perfect opportunity to bring in your industry adopter, and they would then they could run a workshop, they could run a CPD session for the teaching staff, they could take learners out onto site and actually show them how site analysis is done on site. There's a whole range of different approaches that your adopter could take to that, and this is another one of those. So I'm a big fan of introducing learners to the latest technologies and the latest processes that are taking place in industry. And obviously a big part of the industry now is digital. It's a lot about building information modeling and management. It's about collaboration, and it's about the sharing of information. So what's interesting now is you've even got drones and drone pilots that now work for contractors and surveyors, and they are used to take very quick but accurate information on site. So here's an example. When I was visiting a school where the learners were taken out onto a field, they had to do some site analysis of their school field. They could have done it in a more traditional way using total stations, even doing a really simple way of using things like a trundle wheel and some string and pegs. But there's this particular example, they're using a drone. They were taken out onto the field. They were introduced to what a drone is, why it's used in industry. And typically it's used because you might not be able to access certain sites. You might find that it's a difficult site to access, or it's an unsafe site to access, whether it be on the coast, whether it be high up or, you know, on a cliff, whether it be in a building that is unsafe and therefore it's not safe for people to be inside or around. Then you can take a drone up and that can do some really quite accurate analysis. Anyway, they got to see the drone fly up over the site and over the school, all within sort of half an hour session in school time as well. And then later on that afternoon, they had a digital model of their school site. Now, that's not a photograph you're looking at. That is a digital model using reality capture and point cloud data to produce a 3D model. And then by the end of the afternoon, what the learners have is a model that they can then work on themselves, and they can produce their own designs onto their school sites. And you might think, well, this all sounds really quite aspirational and maybe even a little bit too ambitious. Well, I promise you this happens in all of our schools all around the world. We introduce learners to industry standard software from 11, 12, 13 years old. In some instances, even younger. We've had in primary schools in some cases. So we are preparing learners for the industry where it's going. So how to become a DEC school and what that looks like then. So as I mentioned, the Adopt a School program is typically at least a 3-year commitment for our schools. The reason being for that is we want to make sure that this is sustainable and this is something that is embedded. There are much quicker and much easier ways of ticking boxes in terms of giving students access to someone from industry. You could come in and they could do a quick assembly and wave them off again. But we know as educators that is not something that is going to make a difference to those young people. Where we're going to make a difference to young people is by making changes to curriculum and giving them access on a regular basis to cutting edge curriculum and cutting edge technologies and cutting edge sectors and people from the professions within those as well. So it's a long process, and I'm a big fan of starting small. And so typically the way it works is we split it into sort of 3 years really. Year 1 is very much a pilot year. So in year 1, once you become what we call a DEC centre, you would get access to our full range of awards, qualifications, and you would then decide, well, what areas of the curriculum do we want to enhance? What areas of the curriculum have we got opportunities to work within? And then you would take some of our awards, typically, maybe one of our qualifications, typically one of our awards, because they are very flexible and much lighter. And you would embed that, or you would look to place that in one area of the curriculum, or maybe in an extracurricular club, maybe even on a series of drop-down days. It does depend quite somewhat. And what year 1 allows then is for us at Class of Your Own and also at the Alliance to work with teachers to provide them with support and training to upskill them so that they understand how our curriculum works, and then also starts to build that relationship with the industry adopter. Now, typically we say that every school gets about 5 activities a year with their industry adopter. So in year 1, it's just about figuring out how that works from your perspective, whether it's workshops, whether it's site visits, whether it's lesson activities, whether it's staff CPD, whether it's filmed resources. And you get to work with that adopter on a sort of more informal basis, so that you are looking at how that relationship's going to develop over into year 2. In year 2, then, what we hope is that you've got an idea about how the curriculum really works and where it's going to fit into your school, and then you look to embed it. Now, whether you embed it, like I say, at the lower phases or in some of the upper phases, depending on whether if you're doing the International Baccalaureate, whether it's in the NYP or whether it's in the CP as well. So our level 3 fits very well into CP. Every single lesson we have from 11 to 18 is fully resourced. We have teacher guides for every lesson. This is an example of a page from a teacher guide here. So this is one particular, well, it's actually a couple of lessons, but it covers one of our areas of the curriculum at level 3. So every single lesson is fully resourced. We have an online learning management system as well, where there are online courses. We have self-directed courses for teachers and for learners as well. So there's plenty of opportunities to really start to embed it. And then from year 3 onwards, it's just about growing that program now. So like I said, typically for me, year 1 was about doing an after-school club. Year 2 was then I started to embed it both in England in Key Stage 3. So I had a year 9, so sort of 13, 14-year-olds doing a project all year. And then I also had a GCSE class, so I went straight into level 2 as well in year 2. I had about 15 learners doing the level 2 program. And then by year 3, I started to introduce it to our 6th form as well, and had level 3 learners. And then by years 4 and 5, I had pretty much every school, every student in the school was delivering the program or had access to the program in some capacity, and then they're producing work like you're seeing on the screen here now as well. But it is a journey, and that's the important thing. You know, it doesn't happen from day one. It's about, you know, the responsibility is on us at Class of Your Own, me in particular as the teaching development manager, to support the teachers, to give them the training that they require. And we're very fortunate that we've got the Alliance working with us in partnership in the Middle East and in Asia, who are also committed to ensuring that this program is a success in the schools as well. And so for me, next steps, I think what I will do is introduce, I will give Anthony and the team a link to our online course, which is a CPD UK accredited course, which only takes about an hour to complete, and it's just an introduction to design, engineer, construct. You just enroll on it, work your way through it, and what it also does, it gives you access to our platform as well, so you see how our platform works. So I think the next steps from my perspective, I think, and Anthony will summarize and touch on this shortly, is have a look at the course yourself, share it with teachers in your school, and then we can then take it from there. I think is probably a sensible next step. So I think that's enough from me. Thank you so much for listening for such a long period of time. I hope you found that useful, and I'm now going to hand back over to Anthony, if I have the power to do so.
Thank you, Daniel and Alison, for that introduction. It's as I hope the participants can see, it's a fantastically interesting and stimulating program, and we're looking forward to working with you to embed it in more schools around the region. At this point, I'd like to just open the floor to questions, and if anyone on the call has questions, we'd invite you to type them into the chat. If you could do that now, if you have questions. Daniel, I have a question, actually. I know that you, in addition to the programs that you outlined that range from 120 hours to 360 hours, you offer shorter courses that sometimes are 35 to 40 hours. Could you just say a word for the participants about those shorter courses?
Yes, so the DEC awards are, as Anthony said, they range really. They can be anywhere. We have schools that deliver them in as short as 15, 20 hours actually, all the way up. We have schools that go on a much deeper dive with them, all the way up to sort of 40, 50 hours as well. So they're designed to be very, very flexible. We felt there was an opportunity to have something that was different from our regulated qualifications, because for me, it's about giving teachers a soft landing into this program. And we felt that the regulated qualifications are very rigid, as qualifications are in their nature, whereas the endorsed courses, which these awards are, can be much more flexible. So whereas Training Qualifications UK would typically moderate the qualifications, we have the power at Class of Your Own to moderate the awards, and so we can be a little bit more flexible and work with schools to ensure that the assessment criteria for those awards maps to their own assessment framework in their schools as well. The students that complete these awards receive an endorsed certificate from Training Qualifications UK and our industry partners, universities and organisations as well. So I would like to think that with this partnership that we would have that endorsed also by TASS as well. I think that would be really nice for our schools in the region. Sorry. Yeah.
Super. I have another question. Could you speak a little bit more about some of the industry partners that you've worked with? You showed a slide that had dozens of logos on it, all of them very impressive. Could you just pick one or two examples and describe for our participants the nature of the relationship and how those organizations become involved with individual schools in the delivery of this course.
Yeah, I think this is certainly one for Alison. I think if you want, yeah. Oh.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, this is how I started. I was a surveyor who helped schools when I was working on schooling programs. So the first company, and this is a global company I'll always reference, is a company called Mott MacDonald. Nothing to do with burgers. Mott MacDonald is a global engineering consultancy, and typically will be involved in a lot of Southeast Asian and indeed Middle Eastern projects. Certainly involved in some of the giga projects, some of the really well, I don't know what the word is to describe what's going on in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia at the moment, but some of the giga projects, you can Google giga projects KSA. They're involved in a lot of the reclamation projects around Malaysia and regeneration projects. They are advisors to governments across the world. So Mott MacDonald is one of our key partners. And then if you think about other engineering consultancies, Arup, WSP, Bureau Happold, amazing organizations who are working on some of the world's most incredible and environmental projects as well. So Eden Project, for example, you'll probably be aware of Eden Project down in Cornwall. There's another one going to be built on the northwest coast, which we hope to be involved in with Lancaster University. And indeed, you know, some of these engineering consultancies have worked there. You'll notice that we've worked with some really cool people from the BBC, for example. We work with the Symphony Orchestra and indeed the sound engineers who work at Glastonbury and all these amazing music festivals and so on. And that then also brought in Lithuania, we work with similar, the LTO, the BBC of Lithuania, and indeed the Symphony Orchestra there. And then over to Perth in Australia, ditto, Perth Symphony Orchestra. And again, helping children to understand the real world applications, the real world opportunities of working with a real client. We've worked with everyone from major infrastructure programs, so rail and road and so on. We've worked with UK governments. We're doing some work with government over in Penang at the moment on the Penang STEM initiatives. So anybody who's in Malaysia and wants to join up with Penang STEM, get your skates on, because that's launching soon. And then, you know, the builders of the world, the Balfour Beatties, the Lango Rocks, you know, the great builders of the world, global organizations. And these all come through some just incredible partnerships, which often starts with a phone call or a LinkedIn conversation saying, hey, we're working with these amazing children in X city. We'd love it if you could help. We noticed that you're working on X project. And I like to think that we're pretty successful on bringing those people. And I remember even the Jamie Oliver competition, you know, we know kids like pizza and so on. And we reached out to Jamie Oliver himself and said, please, will you help us? We'd like to design a restaurant with you. And so we worked with Jamie's Italian. We're working with the organization in Dubai again this year. So that'll be quite exciting. We've got some really exciting announcements coming for Dubai and COP28 this year, working alongside Expo. So to be continued, ... watch this space. But yeah, typically an organization will be aligned to a school. They'll come in at least 5 times a year, and that's a bare minimum. We do ask for at least 5 days of activity. And as Dan alluded to earlier, and as I can vouch for, you know, if you might not know anything about, you know, drones, unmanned aerial vehicles and land surveys, but you'll know when we come in, because people like myself, people, you know, architects, some great architects we've worked with, Roger Stirk Harbour, Allies Morrison, Broadway Mallion, some really, really cool people around the world. We come in and we basically sit down with the likes of Dan, as we did years ago back at St Ambrose in Manchester. And basically, because you have your scheme of work, we know where our volunteers are needed. We can actually map in real people to those different areas of the curriculum. So you'll never be alone. And again, you know, Dan alluded to it earlier, that's what we're here for. If you need a quantity surveyor or a land surveyor or an architect or an architectural technologist, and you know, one of our former DEC students might be one of those people who come to your school now. I'm certainly taking Gabby Anderson. She's a level 3 student out of Sheffield. She's over in Brisbane with me in just a month's time, and she's going to present on stage. She's looking for an architecture placement and indeed doing her degree from September. So yeah, we map everybody, all the volunteers from industry into your curriculum so they can help at any time, and indeed during the work experiences, and so much stuff out there to support you. So yeah, it's all part of the process, and it's a bit that I really, really love, as Dan says. It's my passion.
Thank you so much for that explanation. I would just like to add that, you know, one of the roles that TASS will be playing in partnership with you is to take your existing fantastic network and expand it a little bit into the Asian region, so that a lot of our listeners today are from India and Thailand and around the region. And the names you've mentioned are international firms, of course, but you've given UK examples in many of the examples that you cited. So we look forward to working with you to map those networks into Asia and make professionals in those firms available to schools in the Asian region as this gets taken up by schools here.
Fantastic, and it'll be our pleasure to help.
Very good. Does anyone else have any other questions? If not, I think we will.
Was that one from Alison?
Oh, did you have a question? We can't hear you.
Thank you. I have to prompt you to unmute. I did just want to say, I have just put a link in the chat, actually, a great start to your deck journey. On Monday, we're launching a competition with the NHS. It's a new hospital programme throughout the UK, but the NHS is really, really keen, because the NHS is actually consulting with countries around the world on modern methods of construction for net zero hospitals. So our competition that launches on Monday is to design a neonatal unit. It's for 11 to 16 years old. We've had schools in Dubai and Malaysia. Paris, of course, already has signed up. Sam was there, you know, at the starting line. He's there before even the gun goes off to start. So do please visit the link. It does launch on Monday, as I say, and all the main professional bodies that again operate globally, the Institute of Civil Engineers, Royal Institution of British Architects, RICS, my own institution, the Chartered Institute of Civil Engineering Surveyors, the most important survey first. You can't do anything without a survey. So yeah, that's out there. So if you want to kind of dip your toe in the water without going full deck, then this is a really, really lovely way to start, and it's fully resourced again.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Well, on that note, I think we'll wrap up. I'd like to just thank once again Daniel and Alison for a terrific presentation and for all the work that you've done in developing this course, and we look forward to bringing it to more schools in this region in the coming year. Thanks everybody for joining today.